here's a good example of improper pruning with crepe myrtles, and these have been crepe murdered. That's what we refer to it in the horticulture world, where they've chopped the tops off of the crepe myrtles each year. Very unsightly, as you can see here. He's lost the beautiful form of the natural tree structure, the shape of the crepe myrtle. This is also a good example of where there's plenty of room around. There's no reason you would want to take the top off of these. They've got plenty of room to grow, and also they would lend some shade on the parking lot just behind us. So again, a good example of bad pruning, and then we're going to show you how to properly prune your crepe myrtles. So we're going to look at some examples now of how to properly prune, and this is a crepe myrtle that has been pruned properly, but we're going to remove some more branches as it's growing, bringing the canopy up so you can see through it. There may be some in the way when you're walking or when you're mowing, so removing those limbs. So we'll come in here and take some of those off using our pruners. You want to cut pretty much flush with the trunk of the crepe myrtle, removing the branch. And the least amount of stub you can leave, the better, because it's more likely to re-sprout from that particular spot if you've left a stub there. So just coming in, you can also remove little branches. You can also open up the canopy. Oftentimes, and this is true with any tree or large shrub, the internal branches will die because they're being shaded out over time. So you can come in here, just remove some of those and kind of clean it up, make it look better. Opening up the canopy, letting more air through. And here's a good example of where a branch was improperly pruned. You see it was cut off a couple inches above the trunk itself, and so that looks unattractive. So just come in and clean that up by removing it. Looks much more attractive. Okay, here's a good example of two branches that are rubbing together, and as they rub together over time, they can actually cause a wound on the tree itself. And you can see here where they are rubbing. Now sometimes they will graft together, kind of adhere over time, but oftentimes the rubbing doesn't allow that to happen. So we're going to remove this branch here to keep those from rubbing. Now in order to do that, we're going to use a folding saw. Now you can use several different types of saws. I like the folding saw because you can get it at a tight spot with it. There's a bow saw that has an arch. It's a little bit easier to use, but it's difficult to get into a tight spot. So we're going to come in here. First, this is a large branch, so we're going to come up and take a little bit of the weight off the top before we actually make our final cut. So coming up into the canopy with the saw, removing that large branch. And now that we've got the weight off the branch, we can come back and we can actually make our final cut. I want to remove just the little limbs that are in my way. Coming in to make the final cut right near the trunk of the main branch. So carefully coming in with the saw. Removing that branch, and so you can see what's left behind here. Really hadn't caused any damage yet, but would over time. So removing that rubbing branch will actually help the plant over time. Just coming back with my handheld pruners and cutting off this little stop that I've left here. Again, you want to do it almost flush with the trunk of the plant, and it's less likely to re-sprout there. So this is a good example of a crepe myrtle that's been trimmed up properly. Of course, this is a tree type crepe myrtle. There are crepe myrtles that stay short, 3 feet, 4 foot tall, and the ones that get 20, 25 foot tall. So in choosing a crepe myrtle, you want to be sure and choose the right cultivar for the right spot. So depending on the size you need. But also, people often complain about not being able to see through them or around them. So you can limit up as we've done here. You have this beautiful bark left behind. Once you've trimmed it up properly, and it's a beautiful small tree in the landscape.